I want to have a quick conversation about the future of the internet and not sort of like the web is dead, this is the end of the web, that kind of thing, or conspiracy theory like the dead internet theory. I think we have to have a more practical conversation because I do think that we are entering the biggest transitionary period that the internet has seen since we've seen the sort of prevalence and the rise of social media. Before we start, though, I do want to say that this is just one take on the changes that we could see. I would love to get your take and your opinions in the comment section down below. It's a conversation, so get involved. So after I watched the Google I/O 26, the direction feels pretty obvious because Google wasn't really talking about search anymore. At least not the search that we've become accustomed to over the last 20 years or so. What they're building is an AI-mediated internet, an internet where users increasingly stop browsing websites and instead they ask AI agents for answers, and that does change everything that we've become used to. For years, the internet largely worked in a very simple fashion. You search for something, the search engines gave you a list of links, you explored websites, those websites earned traffic, attention, ad revenue, affiliate income, or brand awareness, clients or sales, whatever they were looking for. The model was very, very simple. But AI search changes the way the relationship between users and the web itself because increasingly the platform wants to answer the question directly. And from a user's perspective, that's understandable. If I just want to know how to fix something or what product to buy or understand a topic, getting an instant answer is faster and easier and seems really appealing. And a part of the reason this shift is happening is because traditional search became frustrating. I'm sure we've all felt it. Over the years, we've seen SEO gaming, content farms, aggressive monetization, keyword stuffing, and low-value content designed for algorithms instead of people, which gradually damaged the search experience for all of us. So AI search is both a technological evolution and a reaction to what the web search has become. But there is an obvious consequence to all of this. A huge percentage of the modern internet exists because platforms sent traffic to it. Entire business models were built around discoverability, and AI search starts eroding that model very, very quickly, especially for more generic informational type content. So if your content can be compressed into a short answer, you can guarantee AI will increasingly compress it into a short answer. This does become a problem, an even more important problem when there's buyer intent involved, because historically search engines, they pretty much acted like directories. If you search for the best software, the best laptop, camera, or hosting company, you get review sites, YouTube videos, forums, Reddit discussions, comparison posts, and competing opinions. Now, was the system manipulated in any way? Absolutely. But users could still compare perspectives for themselves. AI search changes that relationship completely because the platform increasingly becomes the recommender, the filter, the summarizer, and the final answer. And that creates a really important question. How do you trust AI-generated recommendations when the platform generating those recommendations is financially driven by advertising and commercial incentives? Because companies like Google are not neutral public services. Their business model is still heavily tied to revenue. So if someone asks what's the best product, what's the best service, the best platform, how do we know the answer is genuinely the best answer, or simply the answer most aligned with advertising, commercial partnerships, or platform incentives? And to be fair, this problem has existed in traditional search for years, but AI compresses that visibility. Instead of 10 competing links, you may increasingly get one recommendation, one summarized answer, or one curated direction. That's a very different level of influence to what we've seen before. And once people stop exploring multiple perspectives and start trusting those AI systems as an authority, those systems gain enormous power over consumer behavior, discoverability, opinions, and, more importantly, our purchasing decisions. Now, this connects directly into something people have been talking about for years, the dead internet theory. The idea that the internet gradually becomes filled with AI-generated content consumed by AI systems, which then train future AI systems. In other words, AI starts feeding itself. Now, we're already seeing the early stages of that. AI-generated articles, AI-generated written reviews, AI-generated images, AI-generated videos, AI-generated summaries of human-created content. And most of it exists primarily for algorithms and not humans. And that's a key problem. As content becomes cheaper and faster to produce, the internet gets flooded with just good enough content. And when that happens, average content loses value very, very quickly. But there is another issue that I think matters even more: human nature. Because once creators start feeling like AI is using my work while removing me from the equation, the incentive to create starts changing. Now, I know this affects me and how I create content, and that reaction makes complete sense to me. If I spent hours researching, testing, writing, filming, or documenting something only for a platform to summarize my work to keep the user inside their ecosystem, eventually every creator will start asking, what exactly am I getting back from this relationship? Because the modern internet was built on an exchange. Creators like myself made content. Platforms returned attention, but AI search changes that balance of that relationship 100%. Platforms can increasingly extract the value without returning the visitor to me. And if enough creators like myself stop seeing value in public contribution, human behavior changes. Some creators move their content behind paywalls. Some may focus on private communities and newsletters, while some reduce what they share publicly. And then others start producing content specifically for AI visibility instead of human usefulness at all, which kind of creates a strange feedback loop. Content created for machines, consumed by machines, to answer humans who never visit the source material. And that starts looking very close to the practical version of the dead internet theory. Not fake humans or fake robot conspiracies, just an internet increasingly shaped by AI-generated and AI-processed information. There's another side to this that I think is genuinely important. Human beings like you and I are messy thinkers, and that's often where the best ideas come from. As humans, we experiment, we challenge assumptions, we find strange workarounds, and we combine unrelated ideas to discover bizarre edge cases that nobody could have ever planned for. A lot of innovation comes from people approaching problems from a very different point of view. And the open web has historically been incredible for that. You search for one thing and suddenly you discover a weird forum thread from 2011, an obscure blog post, a failed experiment, or a completely unexpected solution. And that randomness matters more than you may know. Sometimes the valuable thing isn't the correct answer, it's the unusual perspective that found an answer. But AI systems optimize towards patterns, probability, and statistically likely answers. In other words, AI tends to produce the safest answer. And if AI increasingly becomes the layer between humans and information, there's a real possibility we gradually lose some of the exploration and intellectual randomness that made the internet so powerful in the first place and so appealing to us humans. Because if future generations primarily interact with summarized knowledge, curated answers, and algorithmically distilled information, instead of exploring the messy human discussions and ideas, well, that slowly changes how we think. Or does the internet become more efficient but less creative? Now, I don't think we know the answers yet, but I do think it's a question that is 100% worth asking. Now, with all that said, there's absolutely positives to this future as well. AI search is faster, more convenient, and it lowers the barrier to knowledge. It also helps people navigate technical topics and information overload far more efficiently. But this is the balancing act that platforms are now facing. Users want speed, simplicity, and direct answers. Creators, like myself, need visibility, incentive, and sustainability. And if one side wins, the entire ecosystem weakens or falls apart. Because AI systems still fundamentally rely on humans creating valuable material in the first place. Without original thought, real experiences, experimentation, creativity, and expertise, everything just becomes recursive. AI trained on AI-generated summaries of AI-generated summaries based on increasingly diluted source material. And over time, that leads to informational decay. And that's why I think we're going to see a growing divide between commodity content and genuinely human content. Because as the AI-generated material becomes infinite, real expertise, personality, experience, and authentic human perspective may become some of the most valuable things left online. But perhaps the biggest thing we need to understand is this. User behavior changes faster than technology. Once people become comfortable asking AI systems for answers, they stop wanting to browse through 10 websites. And that habit shift changes everything that we know. So no, I don't think websites will disappear anytime soon. But I do think the relationship between humans, knowledge, creativity, platforms, and information is beginning to change dramatically. And I think we're only just starting to see the beginning of this shift. Now, as always, like I said at the beginning of this video, I want your feedback on this, your comments, your thoughts. Drop those in the comments section down below, and let's get a conversation started. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care.
you.